Hello everyone, it's Glenda and welcome back to Creative Grandma's Kitchen. I want to welcome you into my home and into my kitchen, and today I have a wonderful recipe. If you're looking for those quick and easy meals for your family that only use a few ingredients, this is the perfect meal for you. It's a hamburger steak with mushroom and onion gravy. So let me show you everything you're going to need to make this recipe today. So the first thing you're going to need is a pack of ground beef. Now mine is about a little over 2 pounds, so maybe 2 to 2.5 pound package of ground beef. Next, you're going to need your onions. Now I'm using 3 Vidalia sweet onions, and I peeled them and I sliced them. Now if you don't want as many onions as I like, then you can cut the onions down to whatever you prefer. Next, you're going to need 4.5 ounces of sliced mushrooms, either in a jar or a can or however you buy your mushrooms. So 4.5 ounces of mushrooms. 1 32-ounce container of beef broth. You're going to need garlic, salt, and pepper to taste. We're going to add a little bit of soy sauce to that gravy to give it a boost of flavor. You're going to need a couple tablespoons of cornstarch to thicken your gravy. And the last ingredient, you're going to need a little vegetable oil or olive oil to saute your onions and mushrooms, whichever you prefer. I am going to use vegetable oil. So let's get this recipe started. I'm over at my stove and I'm just going to start my burners. Now when I make this, I go ahead and use 2 frying pans at a time. I'm just going to add a little vegetable oil to my pans just to help so they don't stick. And I drain this off once my food is done. Now I already pre-made my hamburger patties. Now when I make this, I do not add anything to my hamburger. If you make this and you add other seasonings, that's perfectly fine. My flavor comes when it cooks in the gravy and the onions and those mushrooms. I'm just going to add a little bit of pepper, a little bit of garlic salt. You can add as much or as little as you wish. And I'm just going to let these cook until they're fully cooked all the way through, flipping them from side to side as they cook. In my next pan, I'm going to start sauteing my onions and getting them nice and soft. So just add your onions to a second pan. And then I'm just going to add my mushrooms. Now pre-drain your mushrooms. Make sure you drain all that juice off before you put them in the pan. And you're just going to stir them up. And you're just going to saute your onions until they start getting soft and translucent. Usually when I cook, I always like to pat them down. And then I keep flipping them as they cook. Once I flip my Hamburger steaks, I just add more salt and pepper to the other side. More of that garlic salt. And then that's all the seasoning I put on my hamburgers as I'm cooking them. So now I'm going to just let them cook until they're done, and I'm going to keep sauteing my onions until they become translucent. It's been about 10 minutes since I started my hamburger steaks and cooking my onions and sauteing them. So you can see that my onions are starting to turn translucent, and you don't want to overcook your onions. You just want to make them nice and tender to where they're starting to be translucent. So I'm going to turn the heat off, and I'm just going to take my onions and mushrooms out of the pan and make sure you're draining that grease. You don't want any of that grease in your onion. So if you tilt your pan, all the oil will run down to the bottom of the pan, and then you can go ahead and scoop your onions out. Just try to get as much of that oil off your onions as you can. And then you're just going to put these in a dish or a bowl and set them aside until our hamburger steaks are done. Now my hamburgers are not quite done yet, so I'm one of those people that I like these done all the way through, completely cooked. So I'm going to keep cooking them until I know the insides are nice and brown and completely done. And I did forget to mention, I got about 5 hamburger steaks out of that 2-pound pack of Hamburg. Now they do shrink as you're cooking, so this is about the size they're going to be. So as soon as these are done, I'll be back and I'll show you how to make your onion mushroom gravy. My hamburgers are finished, so I'm just going to turn my heat off. I'm going to take them out of the pan and just put them on a plate. And we're going to set these aside and then make our gravy. So let me get these out of the pan. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drain all this grease out of my pan, but you want to leave this brown coating on the bottom of your pan because we're going to deglaze our pan and use that as flavoring for our gravy. So I drained all the oil and grease out of my pan, and you can see I still have some of that brown coating. So now we're going to add our 32 ounces of beef broth to our pan. And it's just all going to mix in, and it's going to deglaze this pan and add all that hamburger flavor to the beef stock. Now the next ingredient is optional. I use soy sauce. I love to give it that boost of flavor. So I'm going to give it maybe 4 or 5 dashes of soy sauce, maybe 1 or 2 more. So when you're adding extra flavoring, it's best to add a little, taste it, and then if you think it needs more, add more, and just put a little in at a time until you get it to the flavor you want. So then you just want to take a spoon and you just want to kind of glide it over the bottom of the pan like you're scraping that brown off the bottom and just mixing that flavor in with your gravy. So just stir it, go back and forth, and get that deglazed off the bottom of your pan. The next step I'm going to do is I'm going to take my cornstarch, and I'm going to take about 2 to 3 heaping tablespoons. So once you have your cornstarch in your cup, so then you're going to add just enough water to blend this up. You don't want it real thick like a paste, but you don't want it real thin either. So let me get this mixed up and I can show you. You can see it has big chunks in there. Just keep stirring it until it gets nice and dissolved. So I have my cornstarch mixed up. You can see it just kind of looks like milk. It's just nice and dissolved. So now you want to turn the heat up on your stove. You want to bring this beef stock to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, we're going to slowly add our cornstarch mixture to form our gravy. So I'm just going to set this here until this starts boiling. So my beef stock is really boiling, so I'm just going to take my whisk and just go over the bottom of the pan one more time. And now I'm going to add my cornstarch. Now you want to add this slowly. If you just dump it all in once, it's just going to create a terrible mess. You might get it way too thick, so just add it slowly. I just add a little bit at a time, and I really get that whisk in. Once I know it's blended well, then I'll continue, add a little bit more, and really get that mixed up good. You can see it's starting to get a little bit thicker, but it's not as thick as I want it. I like a nice creamy gravy. And I do go pretty fast with my whisk. I really want to get that mixed up fast when I'm dumping that in there. And you want to keep it at a boil while you're doing this. I'm going to add just a little bit more and see if it thickens it up. It's starting to get to the consistency I want. You can see it's starting to thicken up. But it's just not quite where I want it to be yet. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more. Again, add it slowly. It's better to add a little at a time than get too much in there. So I'm going to add just a touch more, and that should be good. I can really see that it's starting to get thick now, so I'm just going to turn my heat all the way down on low. So immediately turn it on low as soon as you get your cornstarch mixed in there and you get your gravy the consistency that you want. And I like to really keep stirring it for just a little bit to make sure it's well blended. And that's how you do your gravy. Now, you can taste your gravy at this point. If it needs more salt, pepper, or soy sauce, you can go ahead and add that in now. So then what you want to do is you're going to take your hamburger steaks and put them back in your pan with the gravy. And then I always like to flip them. I like to get the gravy on both sides. I know you have your little quirks when you're cooking of how you do it. I don't think it's important, it's just what I do. And then you're just going to take your onions and mushrooms and pour them right in the pan. And you're just going to mix that all together. So now this is the perfect time. It's all finished. You're just going to let this simmer for about 10-15 minutes, or it's the perfect time to go ahead and get your sides made. Once your side dishes are made, then this is going to be ready to serve. So let me go ahead and whip up a couple sides real quick, and I'll be back and we'll plate this up. Okay, so Creative Grandma got her sides made. I'm going to go ahead and lift up one of my hamburger steaks. You gotta add those onions and mushrooms on top. Oh my goodness, so delicious. I also made a can of string beans right out of the can. Now if you have fresh, that's even better. So I'm gonna put a little string beans on there. But the best part about making this dish is adding a scoop of mashed potatoes. So let me get those mashed potatoes on. And then there's another little thing that I like to do is I stick my spoon down inside my mashed potatoes and I make a little hole because I like a lot of gravy. So when I make that hole in my potatoes, I can come back and just add that gravy right in on that mashed potatoes. So that is today's recipe. It's the hamburger steak with onions and mushroom gravy, and you can add what sides you wish to your dish. Now this has to be one of Creative Grandma's favorite meals to make here in my kitchen for my family, and I hope it becomes a favorite to yours. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure you hit that like button and make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the cooking fun here at Creative Grandma's Kitchen. See you next time in the kitchen. Bye.